The end of Junamu has arrived. Hello, this video is going to be a bit different because I am not really doing any edits to this video. What I'm doing instead is I'm going to be breaking down the production for the final cover on the Junamu channel, Finale, Can't Wait to See What You Do Next by AJR. For this video, I wanted to just kind of break down the instrumentals and some of the vocals that went into this final cover, and I figured I would show you how I mix some of these things, little tricks that I put in to make the instrumental sound full and busy. And so we can start at the beginning of this track here. I have a screen going, I have the audio from Logic Pro open, I have my Finale project here. I'm going to say maybe about 40 minutes or so. I'm just going to go into it and show you guys what went into this. So let me throw these on. So starting off, I'll go ahead and just solo this. This is a vinyl crackle sound. And this I just kind of put in there to give it that old-timey feeling. That definitely kind of helps support the intro. And one thing that I've started to do now for covers and song production is making sure that there is a cohesive sound going throughout the track. And so one thing that I have really neglected doing in the past is putting pads down throughout the track. So synth pads can really help to add this ambience, this feel, and just this nice full sound that connects every instrument together. It's like a very instrumental glue that fits all the instruments. And so for that, I placed down a vinyl crackle, and I want to say, I'm pretty sure I threw down a couple other synths on here. Let me see if I can find it, because this thing is a bit of a mess. Let's see, maybe this? What is this? Okay, yeah, this is definitely a pad. So I'll go ahead and boost the volume of this up a little bit. Basically, this was kind of a space, sort of weird sci-fi kind of pad. And I threw this in here just because I wanted it to kind of connect with the Neo Theater theme of being like up in the air and just having all the instruments floating around. And so when I throw pads in, I try not to have anything too loud. I like to have it very, very low. So just enough that your ear catches the little bits of glue, but not so much that it is the main focus of the track. One of the big things that I liked in here were the drum sections. And so all the drums in here were recorded using the electronic Roland drum kit. And so everything that I'm playing in there was recorded in real time. And so everything that is put into this track is it's all pretty much in one go. I did do a couple different takes as I was filming this. That one section, I'll switch over to it here. I'm going to say in verse 2. Where did I put that? What you do now. Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, so in verse 2, I wanted to go into a bit more of a tom-filled section, and this was just to sort of bring that bounce and that beat that kind of breaks through the rest of the track and kind of gives a breath of fresh air. I cannot talk. And so this bit here I had to do a couple takes on just because I couldn't get it down right the first time. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. Most of it was improvised. I used just the basic beat that is throughout the entire finale track in the original song. I learned how to do that, and then afterwards I just kind of threw in some of my own extra spins throughout the track. That covers the drums. Now I do want to bring up the supporting drums in here, because there are some electronic drums that also kind of add to make it more full, and so yeah, this is it here. I don't remember, I haven't opened this project up in a while. I've spent a lot of time trying to edit down the main cover, and so this song production was one of the first things I finished in this whole process. Kind of coming back to this, I don't remember a whole lot, to be honest. Okay, so this will be good. Let's go ahead and break down the percussion in this track. So percussion, when it comes to covers, is definitely one of my favorite things to add. I know I'm kind of doing a lot of talking here, but this will definitely start to get to some of the more interesting points. When I add percussion, I like to add it for the sake of creating more space and adding in little bits of rhythm. And they're typically just little things, again, that your ear will pick up, but it won't necessarily be the main focus. So I threw in some toms here. Let's see. Yeah, so I have this mid tom going off to the left, and it's just a very kind of very steady, like doom, 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 which kind of mirrors some of the clapping that goes on later in the chorus, where they're like clap, 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 or something along those lines. But that's kind of supposed to mirror that, whereas the tom that's over to the right ear, let me play it again. This works better if you have headphones or earbuds on. Let's see. So that tom I wanted to have as almost kind of this rolling feel to it. So if I were to, I don't know how well I can really show it on here, but instead of just like a normal like tap, 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 I wanted to have like kind of a like tap, like something that has more of a triplet feel to it, something that keeps it all connected and makes it sound like it's rolling, kind of if you were to like tap on one of those, what are they called, like conga drums, or just a bongo. That's what it's called, a bongo, not a conga. But yeah, just something that kind of keeps it interesting and breaks that from the other bits of percussion. I want to say this might be a shaker or a tambourine. Okay, yeah. So, I don't really work with loops when it comes to Logic. I like to create a lot of my own stuff from scratch, or if they're not instruments from scratch, they're at least original kind of bits of percussion or melodies or chords. I just try to avoid using loops in general. The only time I really ever use them is to have Logic kind of simulate and create just artificial patterns of hi-hats and shakers and tambourines, and usually that will help to kind of fill out more space as well. It just keeps a consistent rhythm. This, from what I remember, this is a mixture of, I think, just hi-hats and tambourines, and I kind of have that rolling out. So let me just play the whole thing again so far in reference. Okay, so that kind of covers the toms. I don't want to spend too much time here because it is getting close to the premiere, so let me move a little bit quicker through some of this. There are some stomps here that I believe were just there to kind of add, I guess, more of a thud and a big intro to each section, so it's very distorted, and that I think was, I don't really remember what the thought process was behind that, because there is like a nice clear thud sound that comes in, but some of that higher distortion I think was just to add a little more body. There's a cymbal swell here that I added, and that kind of helps to lead in. So reverse cymbals or cymbal swells or anything that just kind of rises in volume is typically a good way to help, like, it helps your brain know, like, we're heading into the chorus now, like everything is ramping up and it's heading into this big musical explosion. So when I open this up, there should be a cymbal swell that leads to the rest of this. So that's kind of that whole bit there. Okay, so I wanted to bring up one last thing in terms of drums and percussion. That same verse again, there's a lot going on. I opened up an electronic drum machine and basically took all these little pieces from it and just kind of experimented with different rhythms for each piece. Basically, when you play a bunch of sounds on there all together and just put it together, you get something like this. And so that was the initial electronic drum machine loop. I kind of combined it with all these other bits of percussion, so when I add all this stuff in, you get this. And then you mix that with the drums as well, and it turns into a very, very busy track. One other thing that I almost forgot to mention on here, this is actually one of my favorite bits on here, is this thing that I labeled tambourine. So I'll go ahead and play it. So I want to say the reason it's called tambourine on here isn't because it's a tambourine. Obviously, that's just me beatboxing a little bit with my voice. But the reason it's called tambourine is because there's actually a Logic preset on here that helps to just kind of give some basic guidelines for compression and mixing. Even though I didn't record a tambourine and use a preset called tambourine so that they would meld together, what I ended up doing was I recorded my voice because I wanted to have something a little bit more organic floating through the track, and I applied the same mixing effects that you would put on a tambourine onto my voice instead to make it sound a little brighter, a little more rough, and I feel like overall that actually ends up mixing well with the rest of the percussion on here. So you can sort of hear it floating in and out through the left and right ear, and when you combine that with the rest of the percussion, you just get so that is that in terms of percussion, which covers a lot of it. That same vocal tambourine effect comes again in the second chorus. And I want to say I'm pretty sure it just kind of makes its way throughout the rest of the song as well. There are all these little things that I keep forgetting. I hear something in there. Let me figure out what this is. Oh, okay. This is what this is. Okay, let me see if I can single this out. Yeah, okay, here it is. So, that same cymbal swelling effect from earlier, I found this out by accident and then decided to turn this into a full thing, but basically took that same drum pattern that I used for the electronic drum machine, and I accidentally dropped it into the same track as the cymbal swell. And what the machine does from there is it pitches that cymbal up and down, and when you mix it with this lower end, it ends up creating all these weird sort of like very surreal, distorted cymbal effects. So it kind of sounds like it's something that sounded very cinematic to me, and after I initially heard that, I didn't delete it because I thought that it adds kind of this darker feel to the second chorus. It almost feels like, in my mind, like when I picture music, I don't have AJR's thing where they can picture it in like colors or shapes. But what I do generally is if I hear a song, I can usually envision some visual image for it. And for this, when I hear this, I typically think of just like buildings kind of crumbling and moving around, almost in an Inception sort of style. So I just thought that was a cool addition to throw in. And that covers percussion. Let me see. I threw in some claps. Pretty standard there. There should be couple other things on here. I'm gonna cover piano. The bass part on here I can go pretty quickly through. What else is on here? The strings I definitely want to hit, along with the old choir sound. So I made my own version of the old choir, and I'll get to that soon. I say let's hit the bass first. So hitting bass, let's see, what is this? Okay. This is what this is. So let me break this down a little bit at a time. So I used 3 different synths for the bass, just because I figured with this sound I didn't really want a very hardcore bass. I do play just a little bit of an actual bass, which you can see in the cover, and that I didn't really make a big focus in here because I really wanted the synth part of it to stand out. So playing the first part of this here, I kind of got this electronic synth that almost has a pluck feel to it. And then underneath that, I actually got these 2 more brassy synths, and I put it right underneath. And I just thought I could maybe emulate a little bit of that AJR horn feel, and having it all lower down, I think, makes it sound, again, more full. So that was just the sound I went with there. Looking at the piano, I don't actually think there's too much here either. There's a couple different parts of the piano. Let me see where exactly everything falls together. Oh yeah, okay, here we go. Yeah, so the piano, there's really not too much here to kind of go into. There's a little bit of compression, a little bit of delay, and some reverb. It's really not the biggest deal in the world. This was just me playing on the piano. I mean, that's that's pretty much it, honestly. There's not too much. I just played on the piano, recorded it, and threw it onto the track. I want to make sure I cover everything in time here. We're down to our last 20 minutes, so... Okay, so we've covered the piano, we've covered the bass, we've covered all the percussion. Maybe what I'll do next is... here's what we'll do. We'll go through the strings, then hit the old choir sound, and then if I have some time afterwards, I'll show you some of the extra little things that I threw into here. I think I want to try to hit some of these more major parts, so let's go with the strings. The strings I'm super happy with for this. Let me kind of play some of these by themselves. So one thing that I do want to make very clear is that, when I say very clear, that makes me sound almost a bit arrogant. So I don't mean it to, like, I guess, brag in a sense, but one thing that I am kind of proud of is just the fact that this entire instrumental was created from scratch. I just listened to the song itself a few times and tried to figure out the rest from there. So going into the strings, I split the strings up between the left and the right ear, so I have one here that's panned a little more to the left, and one panned more to the right. And what that does is it just gives it some space so that a lot of the things more centered in the middle, like vocals and the bass and like the kick and the snare, they all have their own room to breathe and be heard. The strings really don't need their own center of attention. So what it does is it almost acts as a pad and fills up a lot of the space around it. And so I spent a while trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the strings. Most of these are just the usual chords. But one thing that I learned over the past few months is that to make strings sound better, it really is good to have each one kind of doing their own individual parts. And so while I may not have done that entirely, what I did do is with those main strings, I kind of had the highest string instruments break off some of the chords here in terms of timing. So there's kind of a second note that plays in that chord. You have the first and then second. Do, do. I think what kind of helps move those strings along is this cello underneath it, which does have its own entire section. And so I think the kind of alternating patterns between that high string, I don't know if that's a violin, I'm really not very skilled when it comes to string instruments, but that mixture of the high string and the cello, kind of mixing in and out of each other, it really helps to keep it feel, I have a hard time with words, sorry. It helps everything to just feel very lively, and I want to say there might be a few other bits here. Oh, definitely the chorus sections. Okay, so in Logic there are different settings that you can activate for your strings, and I found out that you can have, let me see what it's actually called on here. I can't find it. But basically what it is it's this very quick sort of swipe of the strings that creates a very... It almost opens up the entire environment a little bit more. It sounds very, very bold. I don't know, it just sort of like strikes into the rest of the piece. And so that cello is kind of keeping an underlying feel throughout the entire track, while these top strings are popping in and out. And I think that that's one of the main things that really makes this cover what it is, because this is a key element from the original track, and it definitely was something that I wanted to try to imitate on here, just because it does help to give this really big impact without it being over the top aggressive. That is the main part of the strings. I have these pizzicato strings over here that I thought would just give a nice light feel to the second verse. I'm really happy with how the strings on here came out. So again, just kind of showing the contrast between the strings by themselves. Oh, this is something that kind of popped up on here that I don't think I talked about, but I also added some double basses, which also just helped to kind of amplify the sound of the cello. One more effect, actually. I keep remembering all these things now. And one other effect I did was this kind of tremolo effect that goes onto the strings at the very end. So let me see if I can get that to play. There we go. It sounds very orchestral, and I figured that would be a good way to sort of have it kind of close out. And I don't remember if they actually do that in the original track or not. Something tells me they do something similar. So I am running out of time here, so before I end this, let's go into the old choir. This was an effect that I really enjoyed the process of creating. Definitely took a while though to figure out how to do this. So there's all these different tracks that I recorded and had to bounce. You'll see that there's a lot of different track names on here. There's mid-low, false, falsetto, super low, nasal. And a lot of these are just me manipulating my voice. So if I'm singing like in the nasal track, I believe it's like me pinching my nose going like, "We can't wait to see." And it just adds some more presence to the rest of the choir. And that was kind of the initial idea for that, was to manipulate my voices, manipulate my voice in as many ways as possible so that I could get a nice full sounding choir. And that was a trick I picked up on a couple different videos on Instagram. So let me see what it was I actually did here. Don't you go. Okay, yeah, so here it is. Basically what I did was I took all these different vocal tracks and overlaid them on top of each other, and kind of panned each one left and right as needed. A lot of these are muted right now, so I do want to see if I can unmute these real quick. Yeah, there we go. Don't you go, we need you here. Okay, so what I believe that is I'm pretty sure that's just a mix of a couple different vocal tracks. Some are very obviously very almost auto-tuned, I guess. I manipulated the kind of vocal tones of these to make them sound super low, and so that's what some of the normal ones sound like. There's some falsetto here. Don't you go. Let's see. Let's see, super low. So lots of just random little harmonies. I do want to kind of show off the nasal one on here. Don't you go, we need you here. Don't you go. It's just, it's a fun addition to put in. And so that kind of wraps up most of that. And once you overlay them all on top of each other, what you end up getting is this right here. Don't you go. Let me turn some of this up. We need you here. Here we go. Don't you go. We need you here. And so that by itself sounds pretty good, but there are some adjustments that need to be made to really make it sound like it was from decades earlier. So what I did was, just to fill up some space, I added a bit of reverb. And on top of that, I think it looks like I added a compressor and a de-esser. Let's see. Okay, so the big thing here is the EQ. And so what I did here was I boosted some of those lows and I cut off the highs to make it sound very muffled, just because a lot of sound back then wasn't clear, it wasn't high quality, and the sort of concept of making like bright, crisp, high quality audio is something that is very modern. But back then there wasn't the type of equipment needed to attain that sound. And that's something that Ryan mentions in some of his AGR breakdowns. And so I took that same kind of concept and threw that onto here. I added some delay as well. Don't you go. And that just helps to have all the chorus voices sort of double over each other. After that, I used a plugin called Izotope Vinyl, which is a free plugin. And it just kind of warps some of the vocals slightly to give it a bit more of an old-timey sound, along with adding some of that vinyl crackle. And lastly, I added a little bit of vocal synth. I want to say the reason I did this was really just to add even more voices onto it, some more artificial electronic voices. I feel like overall that actually ended up creating a bigger sound, but this is what you get with everything. We need you here. And then on top of that, I even added some more to it. Let's see. Okay, so what I did here was I kept that same sound of muffling the top, but I actually made the sound thinner and just slightly brighter by cutting out a lot of the low end and raising some of the mids. And so that creates this very present sound. And so it still sounds old-timey, but it doesn't sound as muddy and as low down and bassy. And when you add those two things together, it creates an even fuller sound. And I'm pretty sure I added even more to it. Okay, so what I did afterwards was I took a vocal transformer and I pitched everything down even more and added a bit of reverb. And I tried not to make that as loud as the other things on here, just so I could get a good, fair balance. Well, congratulations, and this is what you have all together. On your biggest success. We can't wait to see what you do next. Okay, let's do this. Now, it's getting pretty close to the premiere of the covers, so I'm gonna go join that and then edit this video and hopefully have this out by the same day. But thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in seeing any more breakdown videos like this in the future, let me know. I have some past covers. If you want to see more things like this, let me know. But until then, I will be seeing you in the next video. Until tomorrow. Bye.